What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here bringing you the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. A lot to talk about in this episode. A lot. I'm a day behind when I normally post my videos, but that's because I got a little wrapped up for some things, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. Here it is, December 16th, and the Nets just came off a very interesting week. It started off with the announcement, or not announcement, but the rumor that the Nets are looking to trade either Joe Johnson, Deron Williams, or Brook Lopez. Now, that was reported by some source, and when Billy King was asked about it, he said, well, it's my job to listen to the phones. So basically what he's trying to say is, he's not actively looking to trade any of those three guys, but if someone gives him an offer for those guys, and he thinks that's a good offer, he's going to trade them. He's not set on not trading them. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I personally like this core. I don't think there's a problem with it. This core of Lopez, Johnson, and Williams won 49 games 2 years ago. And I really think that if you keep them together, the season is still early, that they're going to really start meshing. We kind of saw it in the last few games, which I'll go into in a second. But I feel like you just need to give a little bit more time. I mean, this is their fourth head coach and the third system in 3 years. You know, they had Avery Johnson. Then they had PJ Carlissimo. Then they had Jason Kidd. Now they have Lionel Hollins. Those are three different systems that these teams need to learn. And if you remember, the last 2 seasons, the Nets done a similar thing. New system implemented the first year with Avery Johnson. They struggled out of the gate. Remember? Avery Johnson got fired. They became a 500 team. Coach PJ Carlissimo comes in. They make some adjustments. They mesh into the system. They end up winning 49 games. Last year, team really struggles out of the gate. They go 10-17. Brook Lopez gets hurt. That I don't know if that has anything to do with it. They find a good system. They work it out. They go up and win 44 games. New system being implemented now. Team struggling. But I think the same thing. I think it's too early to tell. Both changes happened, by the way, at the beginning of January. So, like I said, if it's January, mid-January, and the team's still struggling, then I would be worried. But that's not the case. And, and I think they're going to start turning it around, and these last few games showed it. Let's look at the last 4 games for the Nets, starting with the game against the Cavaliers. They had no Brook Lopez because of his back injury, and no Joe Johnson because he had the flu. In that game, Mirza Teletovic hurt his hip, so he ended up being out. But that game, the Nets came out all right. They started off, they were hanging tight, they played well, but the Cavaliers just poured it on at the end. And the Cavaliers have won, I think, 7 straight. And I said it's about a matter of time before they start clicking. They're starting to click, so watch out for the Cavs. So they're on the climb, and they ended up losing by 22. Then they followed that up with a game against the Bulls. Now, once again, no Brook Lopez, no Joe Johnson. Now, no Mirza Teletovic because of the hip injury. Nets come out well, playing very well at the beginning, and then temper off and end up losing by 25. Look, those 2 games I expected them to lose, especially with no Lopez and especially with no Joe Johnson. Would I wish that they would be a little bit more competitive? Yeah, but whatever. It happened and you move on. But they had some great bounce-back games against poor teams, but still, they end up having a great 88-70 victory over the 76ers, which they should be beating. But once again, well, Joe Johnson came back in that game, but he was a little rusty. But still no Brook Lopez and no Mirza Teletovic. But that was the coming out party for Corey Jefferson, who played phenomenally that game. So did Mason Plumlee, but Corey Jefferson really played phenomenally that game and showed a great amount of talent. And Karasev, he started, and I'm finally getting his name right, Karasev. He's ended up starting instead of Bogdanovic, and he looks pretty decent. I still don't know if I would go out there and say he should stay as the starting 2 guard, but he looks like he's not as bad as I thought he was. I thought he was just a perimeter 3 shooter who really couldn't do anything other than shoot threes, but he's shown that he's got some skill set and got some game, and I liked what I saw from him when he played. But Corey Jefferson looks great. He looks great. He's very athletic. He gets the rebounds. He plays good defense. He's very active. I like Corey Jefferson. I think I was very pleased with how he played. And I was very pleased how the Nets played against the 76ers. But I was even more pleased with how everybody played against the Bobcats, Hornets, the next day. Now, around that time, Andre Kirilenko was officially traded, as well as Jorge Gutierrez, for Brandon Davies, who played fantastic in that game against the Bobcats as well. Hornets! They're the Hornets! Get that in my mind. God, I gotta remember. Hornets. Yeah, but he played well. He played really well, too. And the Nets also picked up Darius Morris, and that's just kind of to fill a roster spot. But overall, that game against the Hornets was phenomenal. Everyone played well. Plumlee played well. Corey Jefferson played well. Joe Johnson played well. Brandon Davies did pretty well there, too. Garnett did decent. Jack did all right. Like, everything just clicked for the Nets in that game. Next to the game against the Spurs, I think that was their best game they played. And they just destroyed a Bobcats team that is really, really struggling. And I was very pleased. So now the Nets are 10-12. It's where I expected them to be. Well, of course, I didn't really expect them to be 10-12, but that's what they are. They play the Miami Heat coming up. Miami Heat have been struggling. I don't think Chris Bosh is going to play in that game. They've got to win that game. I haven't heard the word if Brook Lopez is back yet, but either way, or Teletovic, either way, I think the Nets should be able to beat the Heat if they don't have Chris Bosh. So to me, that should be a win. Then they play the Raptors. Now the Raptors are one of the best team in the East. Once again, depending on if Brook Lopez or Teletovic come back, I think the Nets could shock some people in that game. I think that's a really crazy enough game in which the Nets will somehow pull off the upset and win if those two guys play. But right now, I'm going to say that's a loss because, as is, the Raptors are the better team. Then the Cleveland Cavaliers game, that will be a loss. Once again, though, it depends on if everyone's healthy, but I still think the Nets will lose that game because the Cavaliers are just rolling. And then they finally play the Pistons on Sunday, and same thing. But I think even if they don't get the Lopez and Teletovic back, that game should be a win. So, once again, the next 4 games, I'm expecting a 2-2 record, which once again doesn't get them any closer to getting over 500 or getting better, but I mean, the schedule does get easy from that point on. Because then they got the Nuggets after that. That should be a win. Then they got the Celtics. That should be a win. Then they got the Pacers. That should be a win. So they got some very winnable games after that. So if they can go 2-2 these next 4 games, or better 3-2, if they can pull off one of those upset victories, they would be in good shape. Because they should be able to beat the Nuggets. They should be able to beat the Celtics, and they should be able to beat the Pacers when they play those good teams. So this is the opportunity for the Nets to get back on track and become the team that I think they're capable of. That being said, I'm going to take some time now to have some fun. As I mentioned before, there's rumors about Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, Deron Williams' names being floated around in the trade block. So I decided to go onto, the NBA trade machine, as well as going onto my 2K game, and start figuring out a couple trades to see if I were to trade one of those 3 guys or a couple of them, what would I want? What could I get? Now, there's actually a lot of possibilities for individual players from Joe Johnson, Brook Lopez, or Deron Williams that you could do. It's just that a lot of teams may not consider doing them because of the contracts that they'll be stuck with, or the fact that they don't want to give up respective players. So I actually kind of tried to realistically come up with some deals that the Nets could do that would help the team that they're trading for with, as well as help the Nets. Now, Billy King, or whatever the source said, they said, look, the Nets aren't looking to get rid of these guys. They're looking to retool, saying that they want to bring in players that will help them. So I tried to figure something out along those lines, and I came up with 3 trades that I would be interested in doing. Now, I just want you all to know, I am not an advocate for any of them to be traded. Like I said before, I'm not. I like the core. I think maybe the pieces around them might need to be tweaked, but I don't have a problem with this core. I just think they need to mesh better with everyone else and with the new system. So my move would be to not trade anybody for now. We'll see come January where the record is for the Nets. But if I was Billy King, I want to make a move at least until towards the end of January. Because, look, you're in the Eastern Conference. You can make the play. The Nets are in the AC right now at 10 and 12. They could easily make the playoffs, regardless of how they kind of struggle, as long as they don't start getting really, really bad. So I would wait and see how this group finally starts meshing. Like the last 2 years, it took them until January to start meshing. We'll see how long this team takes. So I wouldn't look to make any moves until January, first of all, if I'm Billy King. Okay? But here's some things that I came up with. This first one involves trading Joe Johnson and Mason Plumlee to the Hornets for Lance Stevenson, Marvin Williams, and Cody Zeller. Now, if I was also Billy King, I would either try to get a draft pick or maybe Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in the deal as well. Now, of all the players, believe it or not, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I have always been so angry at Deron Williams, Joe Johnson is actually the player I'm okay with the Nets trading away the most. Now, the reason is simple. As clutch of a player as he has been, and how good as he is, his contract is the biggest. And it's also, the Nets will have that contract for another year, and he's 33, and he's definitely not the same type of player he is. If I had to see one of those 3 players get traded, I would prefer Joe Johnson. Believe it or not. Now, Deron Williams is a close second, because everyone knows my opinion of Deron Williams, but he's played well this year. Not of late, but he's played well, and I kind of like a point guard center combination between Deron Williams and Brook Lopez. I think they have pretty good chemistry, Lopez and Williams. And Johnson, I feel like, has chemistry, but I feel like he gets a little too ball hoggy, happy, and takes a little bit too much tough shots sometimes. I don't know. I'm just saying, if I would trade any of the 3, it would be Johnson, then Williams. Which is funny, what I'm saying is Brook Lopez would be the last one I would trade, which is funny because that's the one that the Nets would be most likely to trade because he has the easiest contract and he's got this health issues, and a lot of people believe he doesn't fit in their system. So, but personally, I keep Lopez because I think he has the highest ceiling and he has the most talent of the 3, and that's what I would rather have. He's also the youngest, being that Lopez is 26, and so he's still a player that, if healthy, you can build your team around. So if I were Billy King, I would trade any of those 3. It's Joe Johnson or Deron Williams and keep Lopez. Okay? But anyway, that's the deal that I found between the Nets and the Hornets. Look, there's no secret that the Hornets are shopping Lance Stevenson. No, and they said, the GMs there said, everybody's on the table except for Kemba Walker and Al Jefferson. Well, Michael Jordan loves players who can compete well and have a good skill set, and in the Hornets' minds, they can still make the playoffs if they make the right move, which they actually can because they're in the East. Even though they're what are they 6 and geez, I don't even know. Are they 6 and 15 or something terrible like that? I don't even know. But they could still, if they get the right combination of players, and maybe Joe Johnson can help, being a fantastic second or third scoring option on that team. I think that could help him out a lot. And as for the Nets are looking to bring in a perimeter defender, and that's one of their main concerns, and really they need another rebounder. Well, look, Lance Stevenson's a fantastic perimeter defender. He could easily slide in as the 2 guard or the small forward and replace him. He's a good complementary player. I think what we have seen from this deal, from what's happening, in Charlotte is that Lance Stevenson is the ideal complementary player, ideal third scoring option, but he is not a star. And I think you put him on a team where the focal point is Brook Lopez and Deron Williams, and then him and Garnett, I think it would work out. And then everyone else is kind of fillers for salary purposes. Cody Zeller to replace Plumlee. Plumlee needs to be thrown in there because I feel like they're going to want something else in return. And so that's just a deal that I thought would work. I don't know what you guys think. I wouldn't be against that deal. I actually think it's not that good, though, for the Nets because Joe Johnson is such a great player for the Nets, but I guess statistically wise, and it works statistically. If you could get Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in the deal, I would absolutely do this deal. Now, the Nets would obviously have to probably maybe throw a couple smaller players in to balance out the roster, or waive some people. But either way, that's one deal that I would consider if I was the Nets. The other one that I would do is with just involving Deron Williams, and that is a Deron Williams being traded to the Celtics for Rajon Rondo and Jared Wallace. Now, this is the most unlikely scenario of them all, because are the Celtics really thinking going to replace Rondo with Deron Williams? Only if they could get something more in the fact to build the team around, because why would you take a former All-Star point guard and replace them with another former All-Star point guard that's out of their prime? Both of those, Rondo can still be good, but you know what I mean? You're not really any better. But it was just something I thought would be interesting if the Nets could try to do. Jared Wallace, of course, being thrown in there for salary purposes, but also the Nets could use him back, to be honest. His perimeter defense and rebounding and toughness was something the Nets could kind of use. And it's just something I kind of saw when I was doing some deals. Maybe the Nets want to put some fluff into it. They do have draft picks again. How funny would that be if the Nets traded more draft picks to the Celtics? But that's something I thought would be interesting. A Rondo, Johnson, Lopez combination might be pretty interesting to see. But that's just something out there that I decided that maybe that would be interesting to see. The third one I came up with is something that I think should be a move that the Oklahoma City Thunder make. Brook Lopez and Deron Williams for Russell Westbrook, Kendrick Perkins, and Anthony Morrow. This is a trade that if I were the Thunder, I would be on the phone 100% making this call. Westbrook and Durant work, but they don't work. They are a great 1-2 scoring punch and a great combination, but the truth is they're not a perfect combination. They're not a perfect match. The Thunder have absolutely no inside presence at all. Brook Lopez is a pure inside scorer. Brook Lopez is not a great defensive player or rebounder. But that's okay because they have Serge Ibaka, who is a great defensive player and a great rebounder. So he'll pick up for Lopez struggles. Lopez can play in the post. Durant can play outside and be the leader. And then you still got Deron Williams in the deal to be the point guard and control it all. This is a trade absolutely the Thunder should do. Imagine the Thunder having Deron Williams, Brook Lopez, Kevin Durant, and Serge Ibaka. That's a great move. And why would the Nets do this move? Well, because the Nets get Russell Westbrook, who a lot of people believe is a superior superstar, and a lot of people mentioned the Nets could get him. Look, I would never do this deal. I don't like Russell Westbrook either. Okay, I don't like him. I don't like him at all. Never have. He was one of my most overrated players a long time ago. But it's a deal that works, and it's a deal that if I was a Thunder GM, I would do it. Because I think the Thunder could really become a huge team if they had a consistent inside presence. Imagine Lopez as the second scoring option. Durant is the primary scoring option. Lopez is the second. Deron Williams is the third. Makes Serge Ibaka that secret fourth scoring option. That would be a fantastic player. That's a fantastic team. I think that would be fantastic. Can I say fantastic anymore? Fantastic for the Thunder, not for the Nets. But we're just throwing it out there. Now, the Nets can also do that move because they'll get a lot of salary off. Because Perkins is a free agent after this year. Morrow can stay on the team. I mean, they will take a lot of salary dump taking off Williams and Lopez's contract. I don't know how well Joe Johnson and Westbrook would play, but well, either way, if I'm the Thunder, if I'm the Nets and I'm trying to dump salary, and I'm the Thunder trying to get better, that's a trade I would look at. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, no deals are probably going to happen. The only one that I would personally really wouldn't mind seeing is that first one, Joe Johnson and Plumlee for Stevenson, William Zeller, and maybe Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, because that, I don't mind that deal. I think that could help the Nets out a lot. But I don't want anybody late gone. I like this Nets team. At least, let me put it this way. I don't want Deron Williams, shocking, right? Joe Johnson, Teletovic, or Brook Lopez traded. Everyone else, you can trade. I wouldn't be happy if you traded some other players, but I get over it relatively fast. Those 4 players, I don't want the Nets to trade. I don't. I think Plumlee is a great piece of trade bait. His growth hasn't gotten as high, but he's still a good player. I think he's good trade bait for a team to try to bring in another type of player that could help. But we'll see what happens. So that was just me having some fun of some of the moves that the Nets could do with one of their 3 players. Once again, I don't think the Nets are going to do anything. But there is a bonus move that I want to see absolutely happen. Now, this is a bonus move that's a bonus because it can't happen until the end of the year because of the collective bargaining agreement and the rules. I want the Nets to trade Mason Plumlee and Joe Johnson to the Kings for Rudy Gay and Reggie Evans. Now think about that. The Kings are a team that's really struggling. They just signed Rudy Gay to an extension. That's why the Nets can't trade for him now. Or else I want them to do that. Rudy Gay can't be traded until May. So obviously that's after the trade deadline. So that's why this is a bonus trade, because this is a deal the Nets can't do until the end of next year. But here's my thing. The Kings are screwing up. They locked in Rudy Gay, DeMarcus Cousins, all these players, and they're going nowhere. Next year, Joe Johnson will be in his last year. Plumlee is a good player, but a young player that they could get rid of. The Nets need to get younger. And how about this core of Deron Williams, Rudy Gay, and Brook Lopez instead of Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez? The oldest of those 3 would be Deron Williams, who will be 31, or 30 years old going to 31. Rudy Gay would be 29. Brook Lopez would be 27. That it gives you a 3-year window with that core to win. I want that. I want that a lot. And it works for the Kings because they get out of Rudy Gay's big contract that they just gave him an extension. Because, look, that team's got to figure it out, and they're not figuring it out with this. They get Joe Johnson, who can help them for the 1 year that he's there. Maybe they can shock people with DeMarcus Cousins and Johnson and still be competitive. To get a young big man in Plumlee to play behind or even next to Cousins. So I think that would help the Kings a lot. Get out of that contract you just gave Rudy Gay, because unless you make a big move over the offseason, you're not going anywhere. And you still be competitive enough that you might be able to shock people and compete with Joe Johnson, who's a good, solid player. You get a young prospect in Mason Plumlee. Hell, maybe the Nets could throw a draft pick in too, because I would love an idea of a Rudy Gay, Deron Williams, Brook Lopez core. I love it. Well, once again, this can't happen until next year because Rudy Gay can't be traded until May. If you didn't sign his extension, it could happen right now, and that's what I would have wanted. But that being said, that's why that's a bonus deal. That's just something I found myself. I was on my 2K game, and I found this deal because the 2K games, the trade stuff, the trade exceptions, and the rules don't apply, so you can trade anybody at any time. And I was able to do that deal. And I said, this is the greatest thing, is what the Nets should do. And then I tried to do it on the trade. I realized I couldn't because Rudy Gay can't be traded to May. But that is still something that if I'm Billy King, I 100% look into that this offseason. If you still have this team together as is going into next year, 100% look into that, Billy King, because that could be a huge retool to bring in Rudy Gay, who's a great perimeter defender, a great 3 shooter, a great defender, A great rebounder, very athletic, younger. What more can you say? Anyway, I had to stop. This video has hit 25 minutes, and that might be my longest ever, but like I said, there was so much to talk about. Those are just some ideas of some trades that I found out. If you want, go ahead and post down at the bottom some ideas that you think the Nets could do involving Joe Johnson, Brook Lopez, or Deron Williams, and see, maybe what could they do to maybe trade those guys and see what they can get for it. So what's some of your ideas if you have gone on a trade machine or something and try to figure something out. But once again, that is that. And the next 4 games, I expect the Nets to go 2-2. We'll see what happens. Thanks for hanging tight to this long episode of NetsBoy. And, yeah. Go Nets and turn this around. Okay? So until next week's episode, this is NetsBoy. Signing off.